Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. Check us out if you have a spare minute. And welcome to May 3rd, 2022. It's office hours. Oh, hey, Darren. So glad you could be here. And today it's an Ask Us Anything because in a minute or two, I will bring in a new special guest, someone I met recently and was just so happy to meet this person. I said, you've got to come on the show. So you will be meeting someone new to me. Hey, Chang, great to see you here too. Of course, as always, I want to thank everybody who is financially donating to the channel through the YouTube membership. People are giving $3 to $10 per month, which keeps me in streaming software and delicious chocolate chips, which, as you can see, I've been eating too much of lately. I'm doing the best I can to slim down, y'all, but menopause is a bitch. Let me just say that. Other than that, I hope everybody's been well. Let me see, what else can I tell you? A quick show note for this week. Tomorrow is not a show. Please do not show up. There will not be a show. We will see everybody on Thursday at the Slack Monthly Networking and on Friday for the Critical Thinking stream. All right. So with that, let's bring in, oh, by the way, ask your questions. I've only got one question so far. So ask them in the chat room. I'm monitoring the chat room, or ask them anonymously at deltacx.link/ask. It's at the top of the screen. I will do my best to monitor that as well. So let's meet John. Welcome, John. John, spell your name and tell everybody all about you.
Okay, my name is John N.A. Brown. That's John, capital N, capital A, and then Brown. Tell everybody about me. Let's see. I've been in the field longer than this has been a field. I started off as an anthropologist. I've worked as a human factors specialist with a more mathematical approach to how you look at problems. I've been a safety intelligence officer for civil aviation in the Canadian federal government. I've worked with a number of different companies on, I guess, 4 continents in many different aspects of this field. About 6 years ago, I got invited to Silicon Valley to help Google solve a problem they'd been unable to solve for a few years. And I agreed to stay in California for 6 months helping them. It's been 6 years now.
San Francisco has that charm. Hello to the people joining. Ganesh will put your question on the list. Hello, Steph and Rob and Jamila. And I might turn off some of these questions so we don't cover up John's face with them. But we're going to jump right in on our first question. So everybody get your questions in because I only have one. So you're going to be, Ganesh will be next, and then we'll ask, we'll see what everybody else says. Okay, this one is a bit of a story, so I'm going to read it out, and it sounds like this. Hi, Debbie. I'm preparing to interview a subset of users, mentors for a nonprofit organization, to understand their behaviors, motivations, and attitudes. My team has conducted a heuristic analysis of the organization's website and found it violated many heuristics, and we codified that. Knowing the website fails to be effective, would there be any point in setting up a study where we observe how the mentors use the site? We know that any mentor with the org had to have signed up to be in the org's program through the website. But aside that, there aren't any tasks to have them perform that currently exist. I'd love to hear any tips you may have. What do you think? Should we bother doing a research study when we already know the site sucks 12 different ways?
Well, personally, I would say yes. Yes, my gosh. There's a difference between opinion and knowledge. And everybody has opinions. Very few people have knowledge. Research is a way to transform the one into the other, or to find that maybe your opinion was off slightly or fantastically. I'd love to go into more depth, but I think maybe that's a good beginning of an answer. Would you like to jump in, Debbie?
Yeah, sure. Solomon, I will put your question on the list after Ganesh. Thanks for chiming in there. So what do I think? I think that we have to figure out what we want to study. So if we know that the website is not fantastic, and if we're worried that the website is not serving these nonprofits, volunteers, or mentors very well, then we probably should be spinning up the study to learn. I mean, you're saying, well, they already did the task. They already signed up. But there's got to be other things they do other than, it's not just sign up and stop. There's other tasks and other things going on. So I would say, what else can we learn about the members or volunteers' involvement in the organization, either through observing a task or through some interviews that might help you? Because it sounds like you might be proposing a website redo. So I think this would give you more knowledge / ammunition for the website redo. John, back to you.
Well, I like that. More knowledge is always a good thing, isn't it? I think you're absolutely right in putting the focus on on what is it we want to try to find out. What is it we want to try to know? The the fun thing about talking to actual users, the people who actually use the software, is that you may find out that while they completed the task, for some of them it was effortless, and for others it was arduous. And wouldn't that be a good thing to know about the sign up process? Um, so task completion is like the, how can I put this? Task completion is the second least you can know about something. The least you could know about the effectiveness of a software or a product is whether or not people could find it to start to use it, right? Could they open the door to that room? The very next thing is, could they enter the room and make some use of what's there? How they feel about it, what it meant to them to make that effort. Was it almost impossible for some people and easy for others? Because in those cases, then you've got something you can improve that maybe isn't obvious at a glance to the person who has done the study or done the heuristic analysis. I've got lots and lots of tirades and stories about heuristic analysis too. It's one of my favorite tools, and I rarely see anyone who does it scientifically.
So tell us a little bit more about that. To do it scientifically, is there something wrong with how the analysis is done? Is it that they're not using multiple experts, or the way that the documentation turns out? How do you see it done wrong, and what's your suggestions there?
Wow, nice. When I do a heuristic analysis, I try to create what I call a hazard map. And that's based on my time working in aviation safety and in the decades around that. Um, the notion is that any kind of an interaction with the device has pitfalls, things that can go wrong. Whether or not they go wrong for everyone, they could go wrong for someone. I try to create a hazard map that says, heuristically, I can observe that these pitfalls are here, or I call them hazards. A hazard is a danger that may or may not exist, right? But there's the potential for a danger there. So I try to flag all of those, and I try to flag the depth of effect they could have, the intensity of effect they could have, if you will, and also the way that they might combine with other things at different stages. Then I create a tally of that. So I've quantified the qualitative assessment that I've made. And in that way, anyone else who does a heuristic analysis, we can codify it and quantify that too, so that we end up adding up different people's opinions into something that can be codified and explained to people who don't understand statistics or psychology or ergonomics. So to me, that's doing it right. When you say, yep, I can absolutely record my opinion, but unless I make it something that everyone can understand and that can be easily measured and repeatedly tested, unless I've done that, it's not scientific.
Good point. Thank you for the extra knowledge and thoughts about heuristic analyses. Everybody chew on that. Solomon says hazards equals potential risks and their possible consequences.
Yes, yes, indeed, Solomon.
Accepted.
It's sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was saying we accept what he's saying. I'll put it up on the screen.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, hazards are a good thing to track. When you're flying into an airport, they have a map of all the hazards around that airport so that everyone involved in the flight, other than the passengers, can be aware of what the risks are. Not because you're going to encounter the final danger, but because you will encounter the risk of it and the way those things add up. It should be the same with everything we do for human interaction, I believe.
Thank you for
Of course, I
that.
could be
I'm
wrong. time
No,
today.
no. I'm getting the next question ready. It's from Ganesh in the YouTube chat. So let me put this up and I'm going to read it. And oh, Solomon's got a good follow up question. We will have to check that out later. Hold on. I'm pressing buttons and nothing is happening. And I don't know why. Can I press this button?
Well, we could form a
Okay.
quick opinion about that, or we could look into it.
I don't know. I'm going to go, let's see, did this button work? And then this button doesn't work. And then this button, I'm pressing all the buttons. Okay, I think I've cleared out my error. Okay, let's try this. All right, that's my fade in button. All right, here we go. Ganesh in the YouTube chat says, I'm starting a new project in healthcare. They're trying to build surgical workflows. So they explained to me what they want. It's from scratch. How can I start the UX for this project? If I start with user research, what type of question do I need to ask? Ooh, this seems extremely broad, and we do have Ganesh in the chat room, but warning, the YouTubers are usually 20 to 40 seconds behind us, so if we ask a follow-up question, then we have to kill a little time while we wait for the answer. But do we feel like, is there a follow-up question we want to ask, and then we can try to answer part of this while we wait?
Wow. I would say the follow-up question would just be, what kind of surgery? Is it intensive, in-depth surgery, or is it something that is more like a day surgery? Is it an intensive procedure that requires that the person be fully sedated and a team work together, or is it something that's more a group of three people are going to do something that takes half an hour?
And my
That to
question
me is,
is this about the actual surgery, or is this some sort of digital product related to surgery or healthcare or patient care? Is it like, are you building an app or a website or a portal or a system, or are you actually supposed to build the workflow for the actual surgery where you're going to be like, step 7, cut the patient open? I'm wondering if this sounds like it might be a digital product. So can you explain the digital, if this is a digital product, what it is? So far, he's written all surgery, so that didn't clear that up. Rob says
well,
maybe the
maybe,
question that John and Debbie ask is how to start the project. Rob, I would love to tell Ganesh how to start his project, but I don't think we understand the project. Let's put the chat up on the screen for a moment while we see
if,
what comes through.
if it's
Yeah,
okay, Debbie, I'm going
yeah.
to jump in and start answering it from my understanding. And if Ganesh follows up and I'm wrong,
It'll be on the
then I'm
screen.
happy
You'll
to.
see it pop up.
Great. So years ago, I worked with a human factors expert, which is old language for UX, whose job was to improve surgical procedures using proper scientific methodology from UX or human factors. And what they had found was that over the course of about 20 years, fatalities in aviation had gone down hugely when we introduced checklists. People working in a high stress job, it's really good to have a list of simple reminders of what to do. So if they get interrupted in their routine, they remember to go back and finish the things on their list. And they found that, sure enough, introducing that kind of thing to a surgical procedure made a big difference. So they introduced the notion that you should have a checklist that everyone is aware of and that everyone is following in the room. So you take out the tools in a certain order, you handle them in a certain order, you put them away before you close up. So no sponges and other tools are being left inside someone. And this made a huge difference. It actually reduced the amount of times that happened. There were other things too, like having a standard protocol for communication. So in airlines, again, they call this uh, crew resource management or cockpit resource management, CRM. They implemented the same thing in surgeries, where they said the surgeon, yes, likes to believe that she is God, but maybe she can make mistakes, like all humans do. And so, like all humans, it helps to have a team of other humans supporting you, which is really the job of the other people there. And they can't support you if they can't interrupt you. They can't support you if they're not allowed to talk or point things out. So introducing that kind of a protocol is a really good thing. So those might be things that would help Ganesh as a general approach. Are they looking to improve? Are they looking to reduce the number of errors of the sort that I mentioned with people leaving bits inside someone Are they looking to reduce the number of miscommunications between people, where a surgeon starts cutting on the wrong leg, for instance, or something like that? CRM, the idea that everybody in the surgery can talk to each other freely, will stop that or at least reduce it. So there's communications protocols like that. There's a checklist that makes a big difference. Another fun intervention that they've done in surgeries is to change the shape and the color of the packaging on different tools, so that when you're reaching for a tool in a desk of tools, you've got a different head on the tool from
Hmm.
one to the next. So you can tell without looking closely whether or not you've received the right tool. So in that famous scene we've all seen on television, far too often on television, where the surgeon whips out her hand and somebody slaps a tool into it, she can tell by the feel if it's the right tool or not. So there's lots of protocols like that you could put into place that have already
Okay.
been established elsewhere.
He says this is a product suite integrated with EHR, which I assume is electronic health records, including planning, coordinating, and analyzing the surgery. So it sounds like this might be a digital product that both the doctors and patients would use for planning, coordinating, and analyzing the surgery. Where should Ganesh start this project?
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Great question.
Go watch
Um,
some surgeries. No.
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't been in on the surgeries, Ganesh, if you haven't met the people whose work you're trying to affect, if you haven't watched them work together as a team, then you're missing out on the key starting points. Um, yeah, that's better than any theory. In the same way that I just went off and told you a bunch of stuff that may or may not apply, you could go off and start studying a bunch of stuff that may or may not apply. Far better to find out from the team themselves what they need, and what they need is not necessarily what they say they need. Watch them and start figuring it out.
Yeah, and I think that if this starts with the planning of the surgery, I think it starts before that. I think we make mistakes. I've got this little graphic I love to put up where I say, look, in the ecosystem, we've got the people who are using this app or system or whatever Ganesh has to design, but there's all these things that happen before and after whatever this app is, because before we're planning surgery, we probably diagnosed somebody with something. There's something that happened before this that we can't forget or leave out. That's going to play into this as well. Maybe it starts with the patient's symptoms and how this was even diagnosed and how we even came to the decision of surgery. So I think that if you're going to watch something, there's a lot to watch here. And I think you can interview people as well, but you don't want to make them the newbie mistake, assuming you might be a newbie, of asking questions like, what do you need in your electronic health record? Nobody knows. Right, John? Why is that a bad question?
Absolutely.
Help out the newbies.
Well, it's a bad question for a number of reasons. You're making an assumption that you understand the parameters, and you're asking them to fit their thinking and their answers into your framework. And it's always better to try, if you're trying to understand somebody, to chat with them in a way that allows them to share their framework with you, their mindset with you, and then help them just surface those issues. There's great interviewing techniques for that that you can get from ethnography or cultural or social anthropology. And they're very, very useful techniques. But yeah, try not to be the one who frames the question. Um, uh, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I agree with what Debbie said about how the process starts earlier. But those are the kinds of things that you can find out by talking to the key stakeholders for your project. Is their intent that you only work on something that will affect the surgical team and nothing else? Or is it only supposed to affect the managers of the surgical team and nothing else? Is it purely for the accountants in the hospital? Find out who your stakeholders are, and talking to them will lead you to who else you should talk to find out more of the history of the project. So you can find out who surfaced this, how it's changed, what the parameters are, and then you'll know, is this a matter that starts with triage in the emergency room and they're trying to figure out a process for emergency surgeries so that they can manage them in a busy schedule? Or is this a process that starts with an accounting team that's trying to figure out how can they book the rooms properly to get the best use out of the resources of the hospital? Or is it a thousand other things? And I've said to, and there are many thousands, So it's good to investigate that, because the answer for an accounting team is different than the answer for the people who clean the floor in the surgery between surgeries.
Yeah, and Ganesh added, do I start with a survey or user interviews? If yes, then what type of question do I need to ask? Let me say, I pretty much never run surveys. I know a lot of boot camps and courses teach you first thing you do is run a survey. Nobody wants to be surveyed about this. And remember that a survey is unlikely to be meaningful, actionable, and helpful. Sorry to cover John's face there with my graphics, but
That's okay. It's a good
the
improvement.
there you go. The survey is not the way to go because what are we going to learn? 60% of people are unhappy with their medical records or their understanding of their surgical plan. So what? That doesn't help us design anything. It doesn't help us take action. So surveys, pretty much never. Interview questions, maybe, but I hope you're hearing what John and I and Larry, who's here in the chat, are saying, which is observe. And we are telling you to go watch how things are done now. It's not about what questions, dear sir, what questions do I ask Love Ganesh? This is about the best UX research is done, or other styles of research, when we watch what people do, when we watch people interact with their doctor, when we watch them go through the process of being diagnosed, planning the surgery, understanding the surgery. And it sounds like part of your project is, how is that going to be reflected in the medical record documentation in some sort of portal or system? But this is not, to me, the best research is not going to be done with questions. It's going to be done with observations. Rob is also here saying, on-site analysis, video footage analysis, start with more holistic research methods. It's exploratory research. Chang, I'll add your question to the bottom. There's a lot coming in. Jamila, I will add your question to the bottom. Ganesh, we might have to move off yours because we have a lot of questions coming in. But John, anything else any advice you want to give Ganesh before we move on?
Yes, absolutely. Ganesh, you're tackling a really tough problem that might actually be really simple, and you won't know which one it is until you define the parameter of the problem. So I suggest you start by doing that. If you're uncomfortable going back to them and asking for more details about who this serves and in which way it's supposed to serve them, uh, don't be uncomfortable with that. Those are the kind of questions that every scientist should ask. And you are being a scientist. You are trying to capture information scientifically and come up with a scientific solution for a problem. You can't do that without the right information. So a very good
Super.
luck to you. I'd love to hear how it goes. I'm sure you can do it, but watch a lot and listen a lot before you try to ask any questions.
Super. Love it. Okay, we're going to move to the next question. Ganesh, good luck. Keep us posted. Our next question says, hey, John, what do you think is the most appropriate title for practitioners in the field? I assume this is because it's UX, UI, product designer. There's so many titles. What do you like and what do you call yourself?
Nice. I call myself a consulting researcher, mostly because I'm a fan of Sherlock Holmes. Um, I think the best title that you should get on any job is the one that pays you the most in respect and cash. And if you can
In
get
that
that,
order.
yes, absolutely. The biggest financial rewards in the world are not going to help you do your job happily if nobody will listen to what you say. Um, I'm not a huge fan of titles. I've had jobs where I asked for the title chief cook and bottle washer. Um, I recently learned, after nearly 6 years in Silicon Valley, that titles do make a difference to people, and that there's people put a lot of emphasis on their titles, and they compare them to each other, and they try to show a career path based on titles rather than on accomplishments. And I think that's a shame. Um, find out from the org you want to work with what titles they choose to use and why. And it's okay, again, it's okay to ask these things. It's never a bad thing to ask a company which titles they use and why, or how the titles show rank or status in a company. Um, Again, I'm not a fan. To do a little backhanded bragging here, I have 3 PhDs, 7 university degrees overall, and a couple of professional titles, and I don't use any of them.
Yeah, I
I've
was
lived
wondering
in
if I should
countries where,
write comma PhD or PhD cubed, on your little, I was going to say Chiron because I'm so old, on-screen graphic.
nice,
Thank you. But then I said, he doesn't use it, so why should I put it?
thank you. Yeah, yeah. Years ago, I gave a talk right after earning the PhDs. I gave a talk where I had PhD cubed up there on my slide title. And at the end of the talk, one of the organizers, let me see, Ted Selker, I think it was, the man who invented the little joystick in the middle of the keyboard. He came up to me afterwards and said, "Nice talk, but you got to fix your credits. It makes it look like you have 3 PhDs." And I said,
Ah,
"Thank you very much. That's because I do." And he just turned and walked away because how can you answer that? Thank you.
right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Please take your survey. Um, But yeah, I'm not a fan of titles. Titles matter to the organization. It matters to the bean counters in the organization. And yes, that is their official title. And hopefully it doesn't matter to professionals very much.
Groovy. I'm going to move on because the show is almost half over, which means it's a good time for me to remind everybody to please subscribe here on the YouTube channel and tell at least 3 friends, coworkers, managers, or leaders about our show because we're shadow banned on YouTube and we need your help getting more subscribers. So won't you please go out and do the good work and let people know that this show is out there helping people for free. All right, so let's move back to... quickly, housekeeping because it's early May. Every month I donate the money we make off of YouTube ads or $50, whichever is higher, to charity. And last month we made under $23 in YouTube ads for the entire month. So I donated $100 to the ASPCA. Okay, good. Little housekeeping there. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the sign language applause. Okay, this one says, "Hi, John. Can you share some tips for contextual inquiry?"
Wow, great question. Um, Let me see. Some tips for contextual inquiry. Silence is your friend. And you want the person you're speaking with to be your friend too, whether it's a group of people or an individual. You want them to feel like you believe that what they have to contribute is much more important than anything you have to contribute, that you're there because they have knowledge you don't have. So it's good to put them at ease. It's good to take a few minutes, and increasingly, UX researchers are not allotted this much time, but it's good to take a few minutes to establish that you really want to hear what they have to say, and that the whole reason for this meeting is so that you can find out how they feel and what they think, and you don't want it to be framed in any particular way. So it's nice to try to set that kind of atmosphere at the beginning. With practice, you can do it faster and faster. Eye contact, tone of voice, smiling, things like this. But you can set that up, and then they will feel increasingly over the first 10 minutes or so that they can trust you to actually hear what they're saying. An important part of that, like I said at the beginning, is you have to be quiet. When there's a silence between you, let them be the one to break it. And this is a hard thing to do when you're new in interviewing. It's especially hard when you've been given a checklist of questions. Here's the 20 things we want you to ask in these 20 minutes. Well, all that you'll get from that is how they consciously chose to answer that question at that time according to the reactive influences of the deeper part of their brain. So you're getting a confluence between their prefrontal neocortex, where they're thinking consciously, and their amygdalic region, where the chemicals are making them emotional. And out of that conflict, they're going to try to find answers they can give to what you've said. What you want is the exact opposite. You want them to relax and start telling you how they feel. So those are my 2 biggest tips. I hope that's helpful to people.
Everyone's writing, "Oh my God, this is beautiful. 100% agree. This is golden." And Solomon wrote, "Sold." So great, great answer. Thank you for that. We accept it. Yes. Manuel says, when there's a silence between you, let them be the one to break it. I'm writing that down, everyone says. All right. So next question. This came earlier when we talked about hazards. So this is kind of a delayed follow-up question to that one. This is, how do we get better at identifying hazards? Is this only a skill acquired over time?
Well, great question. Of course, being a horrible capitalist, I'll say you should subscribe to all of my courses and buy all of my books.
Right.
And that is the only way you'll ever learn this. I'm kidding, of course. Is it only a skill acquired over time? No. I think that it's only a skill acquired through sensitivity. If you look back at the lessons you were taught as a small child, if you were lucky enough to be taught lessons as a small child by people who cared for you, and not all of us were that lucky, but if you're lucky enough to have gone through that, look back at those lessons and think about being sensitive to people, think about being attuned to the other folks around you, and that's what you want to do. What you want to do in order to identify hazards is to think, how would this affect others? How might this affect others? And to be really scientific about it, back to my human factors days, there's a few other factors you should consider. What if one person is doing this? What if one person is doing this while there's another person around them? How would that influence their ability to do this? How would the environment influence their ability to do this? How would the software influence their ability to do this, and the hardware? So their familiarity with any of those things, their ease with any of those things can impact their ability to perform a task. Really, the best way to be sensitive to hazards is to open your heart, if you'll pardon my being very philosophical, open your heart to how it might feel to try to do this task if you were illiterate, if you were high functioning but not fully comfortable in the language, if you were colorblind, if you came from a culture where these colors had different meanings, if you had limited physical capability, if the task of moving from one button to another was difficult, etc., etc. Oh, we've got a big reaction from Debbie.
Yeah, Solomon just donated $20 to the channel and said, I will definitely find you out online and absorb all your content. Well, thank you. I hope everybody knows that when you donate these, I keep them and I keep the money and buy chocolate chips. But thank you to John for being such a wonderful guest. I should really send you the chocolate chips. I'll have to get your address later.
Thank you.
Gosh.
The praise itself was more than enough for me. Enjoy the chocolate chips.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got the
you.
next question queued up. Anything else you want to say about hazards before I move on?
I think it would be a hazard if I continued talking about that and we didn't get to other people's questions.
Hold on. All right. 6, 7, 8. All right. So this one says, I was wondering, when you design something, how do you consider the negative effects from what you're designing, like the ethical aspects, like addiction to a product or misuse or abuse of a product? Thank you, Jamila, for the question.
Wow. What a wonderful, insightful question. Thank you, Jamila. How do you consider them? In the same way that I was just talking about recognizing hazards, because negative effects are hazards. Unfortunately, a huge portion of commercial design in the 21st century has become the deliberate design of things that will have negative immediate effects or negative long-term effects. And that those negative effects are hidden behind the illusion of positive short-term effects or positive long-term effects. It's a great question. It's a really important thing for everyone to think about. I know it's not an easy thing to think about when you're starting your career, or I should say, maybe it's really easy to think about when you're just starting your career, and then when you land your first job, all of a sudden, people don't want you to ask about the potential negative effects. Consider smartphones. Until this year, smartphones have been participatory to the number one cause of death for young people in America, and to the number one cause of death for young people around the world. If you're between, I think it's 15 and 24, then for most of the last decade, distracted driving has been the number one cause of people in your age group all around the world. And distracted driving became number one because of the effect of smartphones, where you have become so ingrained in this amygdalic part of your brain that I mentioned earlier that controls what you do consciously, right? Remember that. I can come back to it if you want. That part of your brain has control. And so you develop reflexive patterns, scrolling, responding to pings, responding to beeps, uh, wanting to know what people are saying or thinking
Fear
right
of
now in your
missing
ear.
out.
Exactly. Yes. And those trainings are understood by the people who make software. They're understood by the people who design the interfaces for smartphones and other devices. And they consider the success of their products, they measure it by how many interactions they're getting, with no consideration for the negative side that Jamila just brought to our attention so wisely. Um, so you have to be careful. If you want to work in commercial industry, there are some things you can talk about and fight against, and there are some things that you can't. Um, I would advise that if you want to be ethical and scientific, you always consider those. You always track them. When I make a hazard map of a product, I include all of those things. Now, mind you, I've got decades of experience, and it's hard for people to poo poo what I say, but they do. I've had my work brushed away offhandedly by people with no understanding of neuropsychology when I'm talking about neuropsychological effects. I've had people brush them aside who have no understanding of cognitive ergonomics when I'm talking about cognitive ergonomics, or physical, simple biomechanical ergonomics, simple biomechanical ergonomics, physiology. When I talk about the fact that if you put a menu on your smartphone that's down at the bottom of the screen, well, then anyone who holds the phone one handed while interacting with it is covering that menu, or at least part of it, with their thumb. Right? Anyone who interacts two handed is covering all of the menu or part of it with the back of their hand. Right? These are physiological effects that can't be denied if you just watch someone use the phone. But I've had people insist it's not the case. And it's even worse with psychological effects or long term socio psychological effects, because people will deny flatly that their product does that. I advise you to be careful and be ethical.
Yeah, a couple of things we've got, and we have a follow up question on the screen. But I also want to mention that for those who like to dig into the show archives, episode 30, which is probably from 2 years ago, and you can easily find it. It was something I was playing with called a bad actor brainstorming workshop. So you can always go to YouTube and search for Delta CX bad actor. And I had this idea of how you could get people from different areas in your company together, from the legal department to security to some of the people we sometimes forget we need to talk to when we have ethical and legal potential issues, and get everybody brainstorming about some ways that problems could bite us in the butt. I think I went back through the bad actor stuff again in either episode 115 or 116 just from memory, maybe 115. But who remembers what episode? Where's Madalena? She remembers all the episode. What episodes was it when I talked about the woman I knew whose two-factor authentication was keeping her out and was letting her abusive ex-boyfriend who had her old phone in? And we talked about bad actor brainstorming workshop in that, so we'll have to look for that. But let me also go back to a follow-up question that just popped up on the screen, and this is from Rob, and it says, since the short-term instant solutions are causing long-term hidden hazards and buildup, do you think agile methodologies contribute to such impacts?
Wow, great question, Rob. Um, Let me see how to answer this politically. Oh,
Oh,
I
you
don't
don't have
care.
to. This is the Delta CX show.
Oh, it's not just that. I don't want to offend anyone who's listening, but I think maybe the best way to not offend anyone is to be simple and direct. And so that's what I'm going to try to do. Um, Agile methodologies, as they are currently practiced, interfere with any long term thinking and any deliberate cognitive approach to anything, in my limited experience. But that's not because agile methodologies are necessarily bad, it's because they're being practiced by people who don't understand the underlying principles of those methodologies. So I've had people say to me, here we fail fast.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Here we go fast and break things. And yes, I've been working at the two companies that made those slogans famous. And they misunderstand the idea that when you go fast and fail fast, the notion is that you're failing forward, right? Let's see, we've already been
So,
shadow banned. Might as well set a record. Nice. So the let's see, the idea that going quickly, changing directions quickly will help you is a fundamentally false principle. And if you don't mind, Debbie, I'll tell a little story about how to illustrate that
yeah, sure.
in
The
your own
audience
mind
loves
and also.
stories.
Okay. So anybody here who is capable of walking, and I don't mean to take those who aren't out of the picture, but walking is a nice illustration of this. Um, Maybe you don't remember learning to walk yourself, but you probably remember siblings or friends, children or friends learning to walk. And we've all got some mental imagery, maybe it's just from television and movies or TikTok videos of infants learning to walk and the way they teeter and stagger and fall. And walking is basically a response to trying to learn to stand. And when you're learning to stand, eventually you learn that, okay, if I do this right, I'm going to fall on my diaper instead of falling on my head, if I do this right. And when people start waving for you to come towards them, you can control your fall and fall towards them. And that's what babies do first. They fall towards the outstretched hands. After a while, they realize that if they can put one leg out, legs are conveniently located for this. They can deflect their fall and go a little further. And if they put their legs out in successive patterns, they can bounce from one deflection to the next and get to their goal. This is what walking is. Walking is the conscious at that point, but unconscious once you've learned it, process of staggering your fall. So iterating a fall until you get to where you want. It is literally failing forward. And running is failing fast. And we go through this process and we learn how to do things fundamental to us that way. It's the same thing with speaking. Speaking is incredibly complex. The biomechanics behind generating a deliberate sound is ridiculous. Think for a moment about the tongue, this huge soft muscle, the soft palate, the hard palate, your teeth, your lungs, coordinating all of those things in order to make the difference between p and b, p and b, or t and d, or ah and ah. The coordination of all of that, and we do it unthinkingly. But as little babies, we failed fast over and over again until we could learn how to go from an ah sound to an oo sound smoothly, based on which consonant sounds we are getting at the beginning or at the end. And we all have done that. We've all done this, failing fast in order to get somewhere. Now imagine that every time the baby tried to walk or tried to speak, some manager reached down and picked them up and faced them in a different direction. Imagine that. Okay, you've stood, you've leaned towards your mama's outstretched hands, and you've fallen down, and now I'm going to put you at the top of the stairs. Okay, you've fallen down the stairs. Before you can catch your breath, I'm going to put you in the swimming pool. And those are extreme examples, but that's what people are doing when they're insisting that you ignore proper scientific process, proper learning protocols, the way the human brain works, and just says, change directions now, motivated not intrinsically, but by the outside desire to seem dynamic. Babies would never learn to walk, they would never learn to speak, and you will never learn from your research.
Yes, more of this. Holy cats, we've got to have you back on the show like every day. So thank you for that. That was excellent. That was like I think we all went to church, as they say. Rob says, an amazing perspective. Thank you, John. If you see some of the stuff coming up on the screen. And Liz says, I am totally stealing that analogy. Pivoting from
Liz,
failing
I'm
fast
giving it
is
to you.
overused. What?
I say, Liz, I'm giving it to you. You are not stealing it.
There you go. Totally legal theft. Our next question is, John, I have a question for you. What are your ways or suggestions of handling cronyism in UX and human factors? Is there an approach to eradicate or at least mitigate it? This is a follow-up to a tweet that Darren tweeted.
Okay, I'm afraid I didn't see Darren's tweet.
I didn't either. I don't believe in Twitter, and so didn't see it, but whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks for saying your inspiration anyhow. Let me see. How do you handle cronyism? Boy, at least we're only dealing with the surface issues here.
I know, I forgot to warn you.
The only ways I know to deal with cronyism, I know only two ways to do it. And one of them will probably get you fired in any place that has cronyism. And that would be a badge of honor you could wear if you choose to. When I was younger, I wore that badge many times. I got a collection of them. That would be to call it out. And don't be angry and don't be vengeful, but just call it out. Could I ask what your qualifications are for having such a strong opinion and influence on this project? Right? And just call it out. If somebody is having a strong influence on the work that's being done and they are only in that position because of cronyism, then it would be a good thing to call it out and make that part of the public discussion.
Darren says the tweet was addressing how people tend to only hire those they know, like acquaintances from prior jobs, and the detrimental impact that has over time.
Okay, so I'm going to shift my answer then. I was halfway through an answer on cronyism in the workplace. Cronyism in hiring is very different. The only way to change cronyism in hiring is to be one of the people responsible for the hiring process. That's the only way. I'm trying to influence right now. I'm halfway through writing a monograph on bad hiring practices that are currently being used. I've been posting it on LinkedIn and on my blog. Though I stopped about a month ago because of a sudden explosion of personal work. But I will continue that, and you can find that somewhere if you care to. The basic notion is call out what you see. A couple of months back, I guess 4 or 5 months back now, I was talking with a company. They wanted to interview me for a role, and I thought that was nice. And I went and talked with them, and I had a fantastic talk with the thought leader for the group. On the other hand, one of the follow-up interviews was with 2 junior people, and they came to the interview completely unprepared. They didn't know who I was. They hadn't learned anything about me, and they had a set list of questions they wanted to ask me. Now, I went forward with the interview trying to be polite because I'd had such a nice time with the woman who manages them. I shouldn't have done that. As soon as it became clear that they weren't treating the interview seriously, I should have called it out. I should have said, okay, well, if you guys haven't looked at my online presence or read my resume, if you haven't even read the summary about me that HR probably provided to you, then there's no point in having this interview. Tell you what, why don't all 3 of us write your manager right now and say we need to reschedule for that reason? So that kind of thing can call it out in a way that's not going to hurt you because you're not going to get that job anyway. And maybe it will give you a bit of a reputation among the managers there of being someone who won't lie down and take nonsense. But yeah, if you can have an influence outside of your personal sphere, then good luck and use it wisely, please. Otherwise, you're going to have to work your way up through the ranks until you get to the point where you can say to people, no, we're not hiring anyone who went to the colleges any of us went to. Right? That's the standard filter in Silicon Valley. Did you go to the right couple of colleges? It's amazing how as soon as you get away from who went to the same college, you suddenly start finding a diversity, neurodiversity, racial diversity, gender diversity, age diversity, all kinds of diversity that you wouldn't find if people were just trying to hire their colleagues and peers. I hope that helps.
Yeah, everybody loves it. Liz says, and you don't get an invite to the pub because you're not part of the pact. And Darren says, woohoo, love it. So that's a yes to that. Let me paste in that you've got new fans. Before I paste in the next question, John, where can people find your blog and some of your writings? Because I think you're going to have a pack of new fans after today. Where can people connect with you and hear more from you?
Well, that's great. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not a fan of the way it's become the Facebook. I was going to give some differentiator between it and regular Facebook, but I can't think of one. So I don't like the way it's become Facebook 2.0, but I still use it a lot. I like what it can still provide. And one of those things is a way for us to connect. So feel free to reach out to me there. I have a blog called The Radical Ergonomist. I don't post to it as often as I'd like to, but you're welcome to check that out. If you use my full name complete with the N.A., remember that's John N.A. Brown, not just N.A. John Brown. Um, if, thank you. If you do search for me on Google, you'll find lots of things. I've written books. I've written way too many papers. I've given a lot of talks. Um, so you can find me for any of those things. If you are in a setting where you would like to have someone come and speak, I'm happy to come and speak. I've got a seminar I'm teaching at the Klagenfurt University in the south of Austria in a couple of weeks. And anyhow, I hope anyone who wants to learn from me can easily find me online. If you can't easily find me online, spend a few minutes on LinkedIn and find me that way. Write to Debbie and ask her. She and I are in touch now.
Yeah, and if you're looking
Anyhow,
at if anyone who is seeing the screen right now, the way we've got John's name on the screen is the best way to find him. It seems to be John, N period, A period, sometimes with no space between those. So kind of N period, A period together, and then last name Brown. So that might help you out, whether you're looking at the screen or not. We've got about 8 minutes left to the show, and I will put up, I know, right? I'll put up a question. I think this is our last question. So if you have a question, get it in before the pub closes. What do you feel are the key ethical considerations as a researcher? Did we go through? This is a different question, but did we accidentally cover this or is this new? Oh, the last one
well,
was
I can
design, ethical with design. This one is ethics and research.
I can hit it pretty quickly.
Sure.
Key ethical considerations for a researcher are the same as they are for any other human being. Are you going to hurt anyone, directly or indirectly? Are you going to support it through your work people who are hurting people? And that means is the way you're asking questions going to hurt people, but also is the work you're doing going to result in a product that hurts people? So I think the answer is very much the same. I really appreciate the question. I'm so glad that you are out there thinking that, because we all should be thinking that. But yeah, the key ethical aspects for any job are the same as the key ethical aspects for parenting, for being a good human being on the planet.
And I think,
Was it Muhammad Ali? Oh, sorry.
but sorry.
I'm going to misquote Muhammad Ali, Debbie.
Okay.
I think he said that the kindness you show to others is the rent you pay for your time on the planet. I haven't got the phrase exactly right, but it's a lovely sentiment all the same. And I think it applies to research as much as anything else.
And for both of these ethics questions, I want to let everybody know that Trina, I don't know if people know Trina from Copenhagen. She was a mentor at our conference last year. She just started something called the Ethical Design Network, I think it's called. Let me check that. There's a Slack community, and they just posted a new website, ethicaldesignetwork.com, and they are trying to get more out there about ethics in design and UX and things like that. Trina's a super lovely person, so check out what she's doing. Join the Slack, and there's already a few hundred people in the Slack, so come on over. And let's see, what else was I going to add to that? No, I don't think there was anything else I was going to add to that. So we do still have 5 more minutes. I don't know if anyone has any other questions or if they were just mesmerized by today's excellent answers and ideas. Yeah, there you go. I'll give you an effect with that one. If anyone has any last questions, please do submit them now because we're going to be wrapping up the show soon. And if you would like to see John come back on another show, or if you think there's a micro lesson that he could do, let's hear your ideas on what you'd like to hear more of from John. Okay, Rob has a question. Let me just copy and paste it up onto the screen. And depending upon time, it might have to be our last question, but let's take a look. All right, let's see. This says, any tips when presenting research findings to convince stakeholders over their marketing metrics? Wah, wah.
Wow, great question. Yeah,
Ouch.
that's hard to do. The only way I know of to do it is to either make the stakeholders laugh or cry. I'm not suggesting that you pie someone or that you pull out a nose hair, but if you can break through to them emotionally. I've done that before by showing at one meeting at a very large company that has been mentioned previously during this discussion, but I won't name now, a meeting with a whole bunch of very high-level stakeholders who had been arguing for years about the nature of some issues. I showed them a series of video clips of the people I had interviewed, one after another, looking sadly at me and saying, maybe I'm just too stupid to use this product.
I think I've told your story
That,
on this show before because your story really hit me, and I've been telling that story. I forgot it was yours. Thank you for reminding me.
yeah, so pulling at their heartstrings really works. I also use a lot of cartoons. I draw cartoons to get the issue across in a way that allows people to laugh at themselves by laughing at someone else. Um, if you can make them laugh or cry, you'll get past their usual metrics.
And I want to take a step back. I know we don't like to necessarily name company names, but I think this is what I wanted to say with the ethics thing, and then I forgot. And that is, I find that because of some of what we know is happening at certain well-known companies, especially in the tech space, it's hard. It's hard to swallow some of that. And what I find hard, and I'm curious what you think about this, is whenever somebody posts to LinkedIn, like, hey, congratulate me, I'm starting as a UX researcher, designer, whatever, at insert company name here that we all know is dubious, questionable, or unethical, I can't press like on that. I can't cheer that person on. And I have so many questions in my head about what, why, is that going to hurt them later? What are some of your thoughts on this? Has anybody questioned your ethics because you've done some projects with these companies?
Thanks. Great question, Debbie, and a great issue to raise. I often feel the same. If somebody has gone to work for a team or for a company that I know is going to take them to the dark side, if you'll pardon the
The
Star
devious
Wars reference.
patterns. Yeah.
Yeah, the truth is that even at the worst of these companies, and I've named some that I've worked at that I would not advise anyone to work at. Even at the worst of these companies, I know people there who are doing good things, who are pushing back, who are trying to make the place a better place and make the product a better product and make the world a better world. I have known activists at any of the bad companies you can imagine. And I don't mean bad in a Mickey Mouse kind of way. I mean actually doing evil on earth. I've known people who are making a very comfortable living there, but who are working hard for the rights of the employees who aren't making a comfortable living there, and folks who are working hard to change the way the product is sold or used, um, often at great personal pain. So I think it's important to consider that. Um, Remember, if you want real justice in the world, the first thing you should do is to be kind to everyone. And the next thing you should do is to be fair to everyone. Justice isn't, in my mind, about punishing people, it's about kindness. And I don't want to applaud folks who have gone to a horrible place, but I do want to applaud folks who are making an effort to improve their lives and their station in life and their own ability to have an influence on the lives of others. It's a hard one. It's a really hard one. I wish that I could find good ethical jobs for everyone who wants to work hard. Um, Unfortunately, I gave up on that career path some years ago in order to save my own soul.
Ugh. Ooh, well, I'm going to sneak in one more question before we have to say goodbye to you, which is heartbreaking. But let me ask you this. We see a problem right now where it's really hard for newbies and juniors to get their first UX research design or other job. The door slammed a few years ago when employers thought they were going to keep out boot campers and just get better qualified people, but then they ended up closing the door on everybody because how do you get your first job when you can't get your first job? Do you have any
Right.
ideas or suggestions for any leaders who might be watching this, or the newbies themselves? Any advice or suggestions of how we break out of that spiral we're in?
Yeah, sure. For the newbies, I'm sincerely sorry that you're going through this process of being new in a very wealthy industry right now when the folks who have the wealth don't want to share it. So I'm really sorry for that. The wealth of financial wealth, but also the wealth of knowledge. Um, the only advice I can give you that might be useful to you, and I be persistent and keep on going and keep on trying, and don't invest your heart into every application because 99% of them will be turned down unkindly. So don't let your heart be hurt by that. Put your heart in your work, but not in the outreach you do to companies. Um, in the meantime, find work that you can put your heart into. There are lots of charities that need your help, especially if you're a designer. It's also true if you're a researcher, but it's harder to get charities to care. But if you want to go in and redesign things, apps or websites or kiosks or customer experiences in the real world for charities, they all need it. Every one of them needs it. 99% of them either don't know that they need it or don't care that they need it because of their own limited time and money. But if you can find a way to donate that to them, you can build your portfolio on real world things that will make a difference for people. So maybe try that if you can. If you're in a place where it's hard to do that and to give to others because you're hurting so much from being rejected, I understand and I sympathize and I'm sorry. For leaders who are listening who want to find a way around this nonsense, just work around it. Just work around it. You're a leader. Talk to your colleagues, maybe not publicly, but individually. Talk to your decision making colleagues about the ethics of paying someone zero, right? Unpaid internships are unethical. Talk to the ethics about hiring your college roommate's best friend as opposed to a new applicant. Find ways to create jobs that are less hours and can involve more people. Job sharing was a radical idea in the 60s and 70s. It's not radical anymore. If you have the financing for two full-time roles, how many part-timers can you bring in? If you're going to have people on board who need to be trained anyway, I don't care if I'm training 2 people or if I'm training 10. I'm happy to do it either way. I always look for mentorship roles, and I'm happy to mentor 20 people. The thing is, the company has to make room for them to do real work while they're being mentored. And I don't know, maybe you all feel differently, and I shouldn't be speaking for you, but if I were without a job and trying to break into an industry and somebody said to me, I can give you 5 hours a week working with this team, 2 hours will be in training sessions with this expert, 3 hours will be doing work for our clients. I don't know any newbie who would turn that down unless they are in desperate need of higher salary in order to save their lives or the lives of the people they support, right? In which case a different approach is needed. Anyhow, if you are in a position to hire people, please base it on real qualifications. Hire one senior person who can help supervise the work of a whole bunch of junior people and bring junior people into the field as long as you screen them for their ability to learn and develop skills and maintain kindness.
And take feedback.
Right? Yes, yes. Well, that's a big part of kindness, right? If someone's investing in you, you at least invest in repaying them for that, right? And you repay them by listening and learning and developing so that you can then give them knowledge they don't have, right? That's the best thing about mentoring is when the people you mentor come back and are able to give you insights you never would have found on your own. Maybe not the single best thing, but it's way up there. Um, Anyway, I'm sorry I'm ranting again, but these are great questions, and I'm so delighted to have a chance to talk about things like this. I hope all of you go on thinking about these issues and trying to resolve them in kind ways.
Yeah, thanks. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to you for now, but I say if you had some fun, we'll schedule another adventure with you, maybe in the summer. And thanks to everybody who joined live or is watching the video later. Again, please do subscribe and tell some friends about the Delta CX channel. And John, thank you so much for your time and expertise and super perspectives today. Fantastic. I'm so proud and honored and excited that I met you recently, and I'm hoping that we will have continued adventures on this show together and make sure to get more of your ideas and perspectives out there to the audience who needs to hear it.
Thank you very much. Thank
So
you. It's
find
really
this
been my
guy.
pleasure, everyone. Thank you all very much. It's been a great bit of fun.
Super. Well, then we're going to say goodbye, and we will say see you soon. See you soon, everybody. Be well. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are